waiting much longer.
All right.
My name is Cheryl Eichle, CHERYLAICHELE. I've been a member of Occupy Los Angeles since September 25th of this year and during the pre-planning stages for the encampment. Today we were invited to meet with 6 executives from Wells Fargo because of the involvement of Occupy the Rose Parade. They had originally come up to Occupy the Rose Parade because they were worried that maybe the Occupy movement would disrupt the 2 floats they had in that parade, and they were the biggest sponsor. And they said that they needed to digest what we had presented to them today. They basically gave us a brief presentation with a lot of numbers and a lot of data. And I think for us, we all have worked with families face to face. We see the suffering that they have in the community, and I think there's a lot more that not only Wells Fargo can do, but the other banks as well. So we're going to have Mark talk about some of the families that we asked Wells Fargo to look into their cases for. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Lippman. Although this meeting is significant, it was a little bit disappointing. Since Wells Fargo invited us into this meeting due to the enormous pressure around the nation against the banking industry over this foreclosure crisis, it was a bit expected that they would have something to offer. What we came out of the meeting with was the knowledge that Wells Fargo, their executives, understand very well numbers and percentiles. However, they have a very big lack of understanding of human life. They do not equate their foreclosures to actual families and people. That shows a real disparity between the 1% and the rest of us. So it's a bit of a waking up process going into this meeting, saying that there's a lot more work to be done. Wells Fargo did take a list of challenges. We had 8 points that we wanted them to address. Basically, we got a we'll see, we'll talk to you later. There were specific families, 27 families that we're working with right now. 19 of them here in Los Angeles, 8 of them up in San Francisco in the Bernal Heights area. Specific families that we've asked Wells Fargo to remodify their loans. They made no promises. They say we'll look at it, but made no promises at all. Just wait and see. That's basically where we're at.
Are you surprised or disappointed that they didn't come up with something more specific? Would you expect them to have something to give you?
Exactly. I would have expected Wells Fargo to give something on the table since they invited us into this meeting to discuss the foreclosure crisis. We would have thought that they would have had something to say, this is what we're willing to do. Instead, it was a lot of covering their backs and trying to shift the blame to other organizations, Fannie Mae, other banks, saying we're not the worst. Just because they're not the worst, their actions are still very disingenuous. Criminal would not be an overextent of phrasing, since they did help in the defrauding of our entire economy, helping to crash our housing market. They do bear responsibility. Instead, what we saw was a lot of passing the buck.
Specific example.
We have one more person.
We have one more person to speak. Yeah.
What will the Occupy movement do if Wells Fargo does not meet any of your plans?
That's up for the movement itself. As it was stated earlier, no one of us represents the movement. We are members of the Occupy movement and speak for ourselves as always. Hopefully we were able to present many of the concerns that have been aired around the country. What's up for Occupy now in its next steps is up for Occupy. There are a lot of actions being planned. We have bank transfer days, the next one coming up on February 14th. We're asking people to move their monies out of banks into credit unions to show the power of the purse in holding banks accountable. I think that's a very big step in what Occupy and people around the nation can do of moving their money out of banks that have been acting irresponsibly. That is a very powerful step that we could make. Any other questions?
So initially they wanted to get a meeting with you guys about a parade?
Initially they wanted to meet with us about the foreclosure crisis, and it was anticipated that they would have offers to us, and none were made.
And we have one final person who was at the meeting. She's an attorney, Ellen Hodgson Brown. She's going to speak.
Yes, my name's Ellen Brown. I'm a writer, an attorney, and president of the Public Banking Institute. Our interest is in sustainable banking, banking in the public interest, which the Wall Street banks have not engaged in. I think the reason they were willing to meet with us was because of the settlement discussions that are going on about robo-signing, and the fact that Occupy is becoming a very large movement with potential clout. What we need to do, if the banks, if the attorneys general do not pursue criminal action, I think what people need to do is a class action lawsuit for RICO violations, which we can easily do. I mean, there's massive fraud that's responsible for the collapse of the entire economy. It's one thing to make workouts for individual homeowners, but what we're talking about is something that has destroyed the economy, destroyed jobs, and it's the responsibility of the banks need to take.
Did you get the feeling we're gonna conclude now, but I want to say before we open up to individual conversations, you're free to approach anybody here individually. I want to say a couple of things. Number one, I've got these challenges, the 8 challenges here, and I will give copies to each of you who ask. We also have a press release that Cheryl Eichley helped draft considerably that we will give to you, members of the press. One final comment. Wells Fargo's market capitalization is the biggest in the country at $166 billion. As several people pointed out, today's presentation by Wells Fargo was filled with data, filled with numbers, with charts comparing them to Bank of America, Citibank, and Chase, with a real explanation and detail about why they were so much better than the other criminals that were out there, why they were the best of the worst, if you will. What was missing, they talked about the $15 million that they're giving for various programs, endowments, about the money that they've contributed to the city of Los Angeles. They talked about money left and right. Money, 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 money. What was completely missing from this discussion on their side was any sense of empathy for the enormous struggle, the pain and the suffering being felt by the hundreds of thousands of families in this country and in this state who are on the verge of losing their homes, who don't have job or employment opportunities. Any sense of human empathy for that particular reality was missing from today's discussion. And I imagine the same thing would be true if we met with Bank of America, with Citibank, or with Chase. And that's the anger. That's the demand for an apology, for a statement of acknowledgement as to culpability. Those demands, Mark said that this was a disappointing meeting. There was no sense of regret. There was no sense of, I'm sorry. We're sorry. Wells Fargo is sorry. The banking industry owes the American people, the entire public, an apology for the bubble, for the Ponzi scheme that was built from 2000 to 2007. That was completely absent from today's meeting. And as we move forward, regardless of what Wells Fargo does in terms of getting back to us on these challenges, we will keep that in mind. That sense of empathy for basic human dignity, for the suffering that's out there, was completely missing from these bankers. We're not going to forget that.
That's right.
My question, why are the courts in California are totally ignoring that MERS is illegal? MERS has no right to assign, to collect money, yet they are foreclosing. The courts in California are corrupt, our judges are corrupt, they're double dipping, it's against the law.